Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds for Plymouth County. This show is about Plymouth County real estate. Our headline for the month was "A Short Month in a Blizzard Combined to Create a Slowdown." We're reporting on the February recordings at the Registry of Deeds, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our county and colony history. And I have the great Michelle Hebsche here with me today, keeping this whole thing organized and flowing. So let's go right to the numbers. The first thing we always talk about are the deeds recorded, which are the sales for the month. As measured in that headline, it was a slower month. January and February are usually the slowest recording months in the calendar year. There were 328 deeds recorded in February, lower than the 462 in January, and lower than last year's 421 deeds. The average sale price for the 27 communities in Plymouth County stayed about the same, but it's still a big number for most people, $687,495. And that includes some really wealthy communities in Plymouth County where the average sale prices many times are over $2 million to those that are more moderate working towns. But it's still a difficult market for somebody trying to break in. The next image you're going to see is of mortgages. Mortgages have done better lately than deeds. There were 1,014 mortgages recorded in February, less than the 1,117 in January, 20% higher than last year's mortgages, so you can see that the rates coming down even a little bit matter in refis. And year-to-date in recorded mortgages, we're up 15%. Since the 2008 financial meltdown, we've always followed foreclosure issues very closely. You'll see the numbers are very low on that foreclosure deed bar chart, and the number of foreclosure deeds for all 27 communities in Plymouth County were only 7 for February, more than the 4 in January. A foreclosure deed is when a lender has gone all the way with all the notices required to take back the property from someone, usually for failure to pay the mortgage, and is usually related to a job loss or a medical issue. Year-to-date, we're down in foreclosure deeds. However, they remain down. The other related document to foreclosures are a foreclosure notice. A notice is the first document we receive to record at the registry that shows a property is in difficulty of going through to the foreclosure deed level. There were 29 foreclosure notices in February, less than the 36 in January, and down 12% year-to-date. I really want to remind everyone, if you find yourself in difficulty paying your mortgage, reach out to a federal housing counselor like NeighborWorks and see whether they can modify the term of your loan or the interest rate of your loan to try to keep you in your property. You have to be vigilant. Any homeowner has to realize it's their responsibility to fight to keep their home and take that kind of action. The next image coming up is a listing of all the foreclosure deeds and foreclosure notices in the 27 communities that make up Plymouth County, alphabetically from Abington to Whitman, and you'll see a lot of zeros there. Plymouth and Brockton are the bigger communities in Plymouth County, and you'll see higher numbers for Plymouth and Brockton. For example, in Brockton, they had 6 foreclosure notices and 2 foreclosure deeds recorded. And in Plymouth, they had 4 orders of notice recorded. Again, be vigilant. If you want to fight the foreclosure, get somebody to help you like NeighborWorks, who does it every day. A lot of people are concerned about property fraud. They hear about it in the news, they read about it in the paper. It doesn't happen that frequently. There are some stories of people that haven't paid attention when they owned a lot and went to Florida for the winter, opportunities like that for people to scam their lot. So you got to be vigilant again as a property owner, not just a homeowner, but a property owner. But we offer at the Registry of Deeds a free property fraud alert. If you go to our website, PlymouthDeeds.org, again, PlymouthDeeds.org, and go to the resources section, you can see the language fraud alert. If you click on fraud alert, you'll come to a site that allows you to put in your address and your email. And anything recorded against that property, you get an email. Now, it may not stop the fraud immediately, but it'll give you a very fast notice, and you can go and check whether it was something that is okay to go on, like a mortgage discharge or an agreement that you knew about, or that something that is much, much worse. Again, you have to be vigilant owning property, and this is a tool that helps you do that. There are all kinds of scamming going on out there in our world, and many of them relate to real estate. For example, if somebody sends you a letter saying you can get a copy of your deed for $56, don't pay attention to it. You can get a copy of your deed for $1 a page at one of our offices, or you can just call our customer service department in Plymouth, 508-830-9200, and they can get you a copy of your deed for a very small amount of money. And everyone should have a copy of their deed along with their healthcare proxy, their will, and other estate planning devices. It really makes it easier for the person who, unfortunately, at the time, has to perform the functions necessary to clean up your estate. We always do something related to our great history in Plymouth County. We always do it around the holiday for the month if we can. And this month had a few special holidays. March 8th was the beginning of daylight savings time. Yesterday, the high holy holiday for anyone of Irish descent was St. Patrick's Day, and the 20th of March is the beginning of spring. So we have a couple of our notable land records related to the Irish that I'm going to take you through, and then I'm going to go into one of our Plymouth Colony records. Since the 400th anniversary of Plymouth Colony, we have continued to share Plymouth Colony records because they're fascinating for the things that they did back in those days, based upon when the Mayflower arrived in all of those years prior to the founding of Plymouth County. Plymouth Colony began with the Mayflower and went on for many years. And then in 1685, the legislature split Plymouth Colony into 3 counties, Plymouth County, Barnstable County, and Bristol County. As a matter of fact, Plymouth Colony went all the way to Tiverton, Rhode Island at the time, and there are many stories that go along with that. And those are the founding documents for all of those communities, including people who live in those counties and people that live in that part of Rhode Island. So I'll get to one right here. A very well-known person who lived later in his life in the town of Abington was John L. Sullivan, nicknamed the Boston Strong Boy. He's the first modern heavyweight boxing champion of the world. He was born in Roxbury in February of 1882, in 1858, I'm sorry, to Irish immigrant parents. He's notable for holding titles under the bare-knuckle Marquess of Queensberry rules and the London Prize rules. He once fought a 75-round fight against another Irish man, Jake Kilrain, and that would be the last significant bare-knuckle fight for a heavyweight title. His record was he had won between 35 and 38 fights, and then came his last fight. His last fight was a loss to a man another Irishman by the name of Gentleman Jim Corbett in 1892. After John L. Sullivan lost that fight, he decided he would never fight again, and he retired to a 60-acre farm on Hancock Street in Abington that he inherited from his wife, the former Catherine Harkins. And he lived there until his death in 1918. Another famous Irish name that a lot of people will recognize is James Kilroy. A lot of people have heard the slogan, Kilroy was here, but there was a real Kilroy. And he became a symbol of what was right in America in World War II. The saying was, Kilroy was here. He later lived in his life. He had been a former state representative in Dorchester, later lived his life with his family in Halifax. His job was at the Four River Shipyard, and his job was what they called a rate setter, R-A-T-E, setter for the rivets. So in those days, people got paid for every rivet that they put into the building of a ship. And there were people that were stealing the work of other people, getting paid for work they didn't do. So Mr. Kilroy's job was to go around and make sure people got credit for the work they did, and he would sign off on it. And he would use the slogan on each rivet, Kilroy was here. And it later became a well-known saying because it was someone who was helping out people get paid for their work, what was right in America. So when those ships went over to Europe in World War II, in the holds of those ships, the saying, Kilroy was here, was all over the place. American servicemen carried it beyond that, and in taverns throughout Europe, they would write slogans on the walls and in the bathrooms, Kilroy was here. And that slogan caught on, and that it became a symbol. Kilroy was here, a smiling face, and that is still used today. The slogan in a cartoon drawing depicting Kilroy remains popular graffiti throughout the world. And our next but not last, Plymouth County record relates to the wonderful Abington St. Patrick's Day Parade. And the starting point from anyone that has known or has marched or has watched it is Bailey's Garage in Abington. Bailey's Garage was started by Eddie Bailey, who moved his gas station there in 1946. He had a gas station and automobile shop located at 9 Orange Street, which is the intersection of Washington and Orange Street. For over 60 years, he ran the business. It was now then run by his son, Jack Bailey, and he also ran the business helping people with their automotive needs. It closed several years ago, but it's still operated by his son as a storage area. And so the Abington Parade began as a bet at the Knights of Columbus over again on Hancock Street, that he could start a parade called the St. Patrick's Day in Abington. And the first year, it was all vehicles, things like O'Brien Oil, Keller Oil, Slattery Insurance, all the Irish name businesses in Abington drove in a caravan and ended up back at the Knights of Columbus to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Over the years, that corner has been renamed St. Patrick's Square and is still a very significant place in Abington, officially the starting point of the parade. And every year, for all the parades, Jack Bailey, the owner of Bailey's Garage, dressed up as St. Patrick's Day to welcome the marchers as they began their journey down Washington Street to North Abington. And thousands and thousands of people lined the street and celebrate St. Patrick. It's a great day. Scituate later has begun a parade and still runs a parade every year. 2 Plymouth County Irish St. Patrick's Day parades. Both of them were delayed this year because of that big snowstorm we had, but it'll be a little warmer than it would have been 3 weeks earlier. And I invite anyone to go watch the Abington or the Scituate Parade. And last but not least on this show, as I mentioned earlier, we were very involved in the Plymouth 400 celebration, the 400th anniversary of the establishment of Plymouth Colony. And ever since, we've been sharing one of the Plymouth Colony records as part of this show. So the Plymouth Colony records go back quite a while. This particular record was in 1656. And the decisions back in those days were made by the colonial court. They met. If you ever go down to Plymouth, Pawtuxet, you can walk around the village from its early days, and at the top of the hill is a fort meeting house, and the colonial court would meet there and decide laws, some of which they brought over from England. And this particular one was based upon a need for a bridge over the North River. So very famous names: William Bradford, Thomas Prince, Timothy Hatherley, John Alden, James Cudworth were, when Bradford was a governor, the others were his assistants, decided they would offer William Barstow money. He was from Scituate. If he could build a bridge over the North River connecting what is now Hanover with Pembroke. It was a place on the North River a little bit higher than Herring Brook, called Stony Beach Reach. And they built a bridge sufficient to carry both horse and foot and they laid it out in the bridge went as far as Hughes Crossing, and people could cross over the bridge and avoid going through the river at a certain point. And Mr. Barstow was paid by the colony treasurer at the time the sum of 12 pounds in current country pay. So that's a little bit of our historical history. I want to thank Lorna Green Baker and Elizabeth White and Greg White from our office in helping me put this show together. Once again, Michelle Hebsche does great work here at Brockton Cable Access and helped me put this show together today. We love to tell the story of Plymouth County real estate. And for most people, your home is your most valuable asset. So a couple times in this show, I told you, you need to be vigilant as a homeowner and make sure fraud doesn't happen, people don't take advantage of you, and you don't have to deal with those problems if you keep your eyes wide open and know what's going on about your property. So we'll see you next month. I hope you had a great and happy St. Patrick's Day, and we'll see you in April.